to EMS at Sea Level. Today's guest is Chintan Sutaria from CalcuQuote. Before we get started into the questions, Chintan, can you give me a quick 2-minute introduction to you and to CalcuQuote?
Sure. So Chintan Sutaria, I'm the founder and president of CalcuQuote. Started CalcuQuote about 5 years ago, but my journey in EMS started when I was, I think, 11 years old, putting parts on circuit boards for my dad's company. So evenings, weekends, vacations, I was doing that. And what that's kind of evolved to is when I started CalcuQuote, it was that doing RFQs was the most painful part of of any job I did in the EMS company because it was just so tedious. And so that's how CalcuQuote got started, is let's just make that process easier. And today what we've become is we just focus on software solutions for EMS companies to help move the industry forward.
Okay, and that goes from the quote process through the kind of purchasing process and right into inventory management, yeah?
Exactly, yeah. So we're trying to basically help improve the overall supply chain process. So that includes quoting, purchasing, inventory management, everything in between.
Okay. And before we get to that whole digital transformation side, which I think is really interesting at the moment, tell me a bit about your experiences over the last 2 to 3 months in terms of what you've seen. And then we'll explore some of the challenges that your customers have had and how you've helped them overcome those.
Yeah, last couple months have been interesting, to say the least, obviously, and that's quite an understatement. I think they've been very challenging for a lot of people. For me personally, I feel very fortunate because, working in a software company, you can very quickly and easily isolate yourself away from the world and operate anywhere with an internet connection. And that's kind of what I instructed our team. So in early March, before all the official lockdowns and everything became reality in the US at least, we kind of just said, you know what, everybody can just work from home anyway. So let's just start doing that and see what happens. So yeah, personally for me, it's been mostly just, I think this 10 by 10 room has been where I've spent most of my time. And from a business perspective, it's been pretty much, a continuation of what's normal for us, except that instead of walking around the office and stopping into people's doors and saying hello, it's just a quick Zoom call away, which we've been accustomed to for a couple of years already.
Yeah, and when you look at your customers and the challenges they've had, some of them have had challenges with respect to supply, some with demand, some are involved in the fight against COVID-19 in terms of equipment and PPE and different consumables. Where have you been able to kind of help and support that? Has it been by using your tools to give them the visibility to pivot quickly?
Yeah, I mean, so our customers are primarily they're high mix, low volume EMS companies. And so as a result of that, they're definitely, on the smaller scale of businesses. And so small businesses, I think, do get disproportionately impacted by disruptions. One of the nice things that's come out of this is it's definitely demonstrated a lot of resilience amongst our customers, right? Where they've really found ways to innovate and find opportunities to contribute in this fight to COVID. So early on, one of our account managers kind of led the charge, but really the CalcuQuote team in general got a call from one of our customers who said, "Hey, I'm putting together this thing for an open ventilator project. And you guys know a lot of EMS companies. Can you help spread the word?" And so we sent out, a few emails to our customers, and we ended up on a call with 16 EMS companies kind of saying, okay, well, how can we contribute? And it was just introductions and trying to connect dots. But that was a really cool thing to see how people who are otherwise probably in a competitive, highly competitive industry where they were just getting together and saying, yeah, this is a common thing that we're all going to work together because we're all on the same team here. So I think that was really cool example of how the world's kind of coming together around this thing.
Yeah, and it's curious, isn't it? And it's great to see that. And actually, that's one of your roles in the industry anyway, with your manipulation of data, is to connect people and bring all that data in real time together so people can make better decisions and can move on quickly. So that makes sense. And it has been fabulous to see some of the collaborations. I saw a couple of press releases recently with Jabil and Flex mentioned in the same title as supporting Philips on ventilator projects, and it's not often you see those companies looking like a team. So that's fantastic to see. So I kind of think we've gone through this very urgent stage, and we're now getting to this important stage of how we manage recovery. And then obviously we've got to figure out what a post-COVID world looks like. What do you see in the medium term in terms of how that impacts your business and how you can help? And then what do you see as the long-term future for your company and the industry?
Yeah, so I think what this did is it opened our eyes to a lot of things, right? I mean, before this, it was I think a lot of manufacturing companies, and I'll throw us into that mix too, is we thought business had to be done a certain way. You had to go out in person and look somebody in the eyes and shake their hand and tour their facility and do all these things. And I think we're starting to realize that you can also build relationships that are authentic through some virtual means. You can operate a manufacturing facility with a greater degree of efficiency and flexibility, and maintaining some sort of health standards and things like that. So we're definitely starting to see that become the new reality. In terms of the medium term, though, I don't think that at least our customers primarily have been significantly disrupted in a permanent way. So I know there's definitely a couple factories that I know of where they've had furloughs and things like that. But for the most part, they've actually kind of just said, we're going to hunker down, we're going to weather the storm, and it's going to be a temporary one. And, if the numbers are any indicator, our RFQ volume hasn't gone down. So that's a metric that we track internally of, how many quotes are people doing? And that number has actually continued to stay relatively flat compared to historical trends. So it's not like it's spiked, but it's also not dropped at all. So that's to us a good leading indicator that, people are still working, they're still doing their jobs, which is a positive sign for this industry in particular. And then for our business, we've kind of been the future state of what this industry is going to be. And so focusing on digital supply chain and things like that, where, like I said, the old methods of doing businesses are getting replaced by digitalization, then what's happening is demand for a software like ours is increasing. So we actually had a record month in March and then April, and May is looking pretty good too. So people are starting to see a need for software like ours in the marketplace.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting. Those RFQ indicators are really encouraging. It would be great to be able to get to follow those statistics through and find out how many of those actually converted to business. And I guess with Shop CQ and other stuff in the future, there's the potential to do that. But what I wanted to explore a little bit was that idea of the digital transformation being accelerated. And my sense is there was a process happening anyway. And tariffs and trade wars were certainly playing into that. And I've read in a few places that historically crises don't actually create change, they just accelerate change. So a lot of people are saying that innovation in terms of digital transformation is going to happen much, much quicker as a result of this. Is that something you concur with?
Yeah, one of the things that we talk about internally at CalcuQuote quite a bit is there's this book out there called Crossing the Chasm. And there's this, there's the early innovators that, they want the new thing because it's the new thing. And those are the people that are going to be fans of yours just because you're new. And then there's the people who want a significant step up in functionality. But then there's a section of that, bell curve that says, I only want to move to the new thing if there's some sort of factor that's going to push me in that direction. And disruption like this is going to be a big factor towards that. So yeah, I think we're starting to see there was already people that were adopting digital supply chain solutions, but now there's that middle mass layer that's now saying, oh, well, now there's a necessary external factor that's going to force me in that direction.
Yeah, and what do you think the key factors that people are looking for in the supply chain are? You mentioned resilience. I think that's going to be a given. And previously people were trying to lean out their inventory as much as possible. So just in time was the mantra, and now it seems to be more just in case. Is agility just as important as resilience?
Yeah, I think up and down the supply chain, we're going to definitely see people start to focus on agility and on resilience. But I also think people are still going to, after a certain time, they're going to go back to also maintaining efficiency. There's going to be a fine balance between it, right? And human memory as kind of a species is short, as in we tend to forget the most recent disaster after a certain amount of time. So we'll, of course, this is kind of a reminder that all of those things need to work in harmony. You got to have the flexibility, you got to have the profitability, you got to have the backup plans and things like that. And so we'll readjust, and then after a while we'll have something else reminding us. So of recent memory, there was the tariffs a few years ago, and now there's this, and tomorrow there'll be something else. And supply chains are, every time something like this happens, it's always unprecedented, but there's always going to be something, and you figure that out.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think the unprecedented nature is the important thing, because we've got a plan for the next crisis, but the one thing that is for sure is we don't know what that crisis will be and what it'll look like. So, if we can have supply chains that are agile, that have some built-in redundancy, that are resilient to different impacts. And to me, one of the critical parts of that is having real-time data and actually being able to quickly assess what the disruption is and then manage it. So I think that makes sense. Just moving to the kind of lighter side, you mentioned your team are all in lockdown. I know software guys are notorious for not wanting to go out much anyway, so I guess that's fine for them. But how are the team coping right now? How are you doing regular kind of team Zoom calls, keeping everybody motivated?
Yeah, it's funny you ask. So we've been using Zoom for a couple years now, if not maybe 3 years almost, right? So we're very used to this kind of online interaction, and we have a global team. We have team members in India, we have people here, we have people in Europe now, and with that, so we've gotten very used to this virtual communication. But what's become the biggest challenge as of the last couple months for me is, if we're organizing a team happy hour or something like that, which try to do periodically, then it's like, well, okay, I guess you can grab a drink and sit in front of your camera and talk to everybody, but it doesn't have the quite same feel to it. So I try to find these like online games, or we'll play we'll play a board game or something. So Friday afternoons, try to schedule something just to make sure we're having that relationship element alive too, and it keeps things fun. And then we also have chat rooms where we send GIFs and jokes and things like that, so it keeps it interesting.
Yeah, and you can't always do the cocktail, because it's probably going to be cocktail o'clock for you somewhere, and somewhere in India it's going to be breakfast time. So maybe that's not the ideal solution. And what about you and your family? What have you been doing? What have you been binging on Netflix and Apple TV and the like?
Yeah. Oh man, I think so my wife and I started watching all of the Marvel Universe movies a few weeks ago. So that's become kind of our routine. Fortunately for me and for her, we both tend to be working pretty long hours during the week. So when the weekend comes around, it's like, well, now we get a night and I'm not traveling anymore. So get to spend some time at home watching a movie with the wife, and enjoying cooking dinner and things like that. So I don't think I've ever cooked so much and watched so much TV before.
No, there's some stuff like that, and time with family, and our lack of spending time on planes, that actually I think has been quite a healthy output, and it'll be interesting to see how some of that comes back. It's it's fascinating.
Well, and
I've seen a lot of people doing series of movies. I'm working my way through the Tarantino films at the moment. I'm kind of midway through, and that's a long task.
Yeah, no, that's definitely, any marathon you start is going to be a long task. I learned this weekend, I had my nieces and nephews over, and they're into Spider-Man, and so we were watching all these cartoon Spider-Man things, and I was like, oh man, this is going to be a long day.
Yeah, there you go.
If you try to go through all of them. So yeah,
and their capacity to watch one after the other. Before we go, Chintan, what advice would you offer to your peers, to people running businesses in this difficult time, and particularly to those in the EMS sector?
I think I'll say what I said to my team when this all started. So back in March, when uncertainty was high, there was three things came to mind. One is that recognize the silver lining in this, right? So everybody has some sort of privilege in their life, and it's important to recognize that when times get tough, recognize the good and stay positive, because otherwise you can get drowned in all the negative things that are going on. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you got to persevere. Everybody still has some role that they play in the world, right? Whether it's your day job or whether it's something else, but everybody's got to have some sort of purpose. And then the third thing is that whatever happens, you'll persevere, right?
Yeah.
The world's gone through worse before, and if there's one thing about, I think, anybody, is it's the human spirit is going to persevere through a lot of things.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and the human spirit is impressive, and we've seen some really good examples of that, and the collaborations you mentioned earlier are one great example of humanity doing the right thing when it's needed. Chintan, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for your candor. It's been a pleasure to chat to you, and until next time on EMS at Sea Level, thank you everybody for watching.